A house without windows and doors is like one of those Disney live action remakes. It's pointless and full of holes. So let's fix that. I'm also going to throw some textures on our house and build some footings for our posts. And there we'll have some fun with collection instances to save on some computing power. Let's go. Okay, I'm going to collapse all my timber frame collections here. And I'm going to get them out of the way. I'm also going to get the ceiling out of the way and turn off the face orientation. As usual, I don't want to stare at red faces all the time. So the first thing I'm going to do is I want to have some peak windows in here over the door and over these windows here, and same in the back. So I'm going to cut some more holes in here first. On my wall, I'm going to go into edit mode and I'm going to get rid of this edge loop here. So I'm going to alt select it and Control X. I'm going to make a new one, Control R, and I'm going to press E to even it out. And I'm going to bring it to about there. So I have a decent distance between the two windows. There's no specs for these ones, so I just got to go with what I think is right here. So we want to have a bit of a distance between the windows. So that's what we're going to go with. I'm going to make another loop cut here. Control R. E to even it out and F to flip it to make it even with the peak. And now we want to have the windows about this big. So we have roughly the same distance here as we have here. And now we're going to add the same ones on the inside here. I'm going to go into X-ray mode. Control R. Even it out. And I'm still on edge snapping here. That's not really what I want. So I'm going to GZ bring it to the outer edge loop. And I'm going to do one more, as we did before. And snap it there. And these should hopefully... No, they don't line up. GZ. Now they line up on both sides. A to select everything. M to merge by distance. And 63 vertices. Not bad. Go into face select. And I'm going to bridge these faces. Right click bridge. Shift R to repeat the last operation. Shift R. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. Now if we go out of X-ray mode, there's going to be some nice big peak windows. They're going to let a lot of light into our living room. Okay, the next thing I want to do is separate the exterior wall from the interior wall. So I'm going to, with my wall selector, I'm going to local view. Go into top view, vertex mode, and wireframe. And I'm going to select all the vertices on the outside. P to separate the selection. And then I can go back into object mode and rename that wall to walls exterior. Okay, I'm gonna go out of local view and back into local view on my exterior wall here. And I want to mimic the foundation. And then the sheeting will be 19 millimeters proud of the foundation. So the first thing I'm going to do is add another edge loop here. Actually, I should do that out of local view so I see where I am compared to the porches. I'm going to get the ground plane out of the way. So I'm going to bring that to about there. So we have a little bit of foundation showing, which is actually quite common. So I'm going to make sure that I have that same edge loop everywhere. And I can just, once I add it, I can just snap it to the same height. Oh, look at that. I'm missing a face. Fix that in a second. This edge and this edge, F to fill. So now I want to bring out all the faces above that new edge loop out by 19 millimeters. But if I use the shrink fatten option the way it is right now with those peak faces that I've created here, the way they're attached here, it's gonna get all funky and screwed up even with offset even. So temporarily, I'm going to select all these faces if I go into face mode. That makes more sense. And I'm also going to take these ones here and I'm going to temporarily separate them from my wall. And then with just my wall here selected, I'm going to select these two edge loops everywhere. And I'm going to Control I to invert the selection. And I'm going to Alt E extrude the faces along the normals by 19 millimeters. Let's just make sure we go offset even, and that straightens out these corners. And let's just make sure we got them all. Oh, there is some funkiness going on here. Let's go into vertex mode. I'm gonna say this one here should be right above these ones. So I'm gonna go G, Shift, Z to exclude the Z axis and snap it there. And that looks pretty good to me. Let's just make sure, yeah, it's the same one over here. G, Shift, Z over here. These ones look good. That one looks good. And that one looks good. What about the inside corner over here? Ah, there we got the same problem. So let's grab this one here. G, Shift, Z and snap it. So now I'm going to go back to my peaks here. And this one here, I'm going to go GX, snap it to the outside. And then in face select, select all the faces over here and snap them to the outside here. GX, snap there. And I'm also gonna delete all these little faces on the very top here. So in face mode, Alt select the whole face loop. X to delete the faces. I'm gonna back into object mode. I'm gonna select the peak first and then the walls. And Control J to join them back together. And that will have created a bunch of double vertices here again. So A to select everything, M merge by distance, 28 removed, and there we go. But now we have a nice separation between the foundation and the sheeting that would be on the wall. So before I start throwing windows and doors in, I want to have one texture on there which will have displacement. And I want to have that on there before I throw the windows in, because then I can adjust the window flanges or how far the windows peek out of the texture as I go along. So on the exterior wall here, I'm going to go into face select one more time. Select one here, one here, one here. Shift G, coplanar. And I'm going to deselect all the ones on the other side here. I am going to P separate that selection, because on this one I want to have a more dense topology for the displacement to work correctly. So I'm going to go into edit mode and add a bunch of loop cuts here. Let's go into local view, make it a little easier. So I'm going to start over here and I'm going to add, what do we got, 6? Yeah, 6 is good. Try to keep it the same on either side. 6 cuts there. Let's get 2 in there, and I think that should be all right. So one more thing I'm going to do is Control 1 to add a subdivision surface modifier. I'm going to switch it over to simple and adaptive. Now, if you don't see adaptive, you got to go under the render settings here in cycles and switch from supported to experimental. But now if we go into wireframe and turn off the optimal display, we can see we have a nicely dense mesh for our displacement, and when we render it, it will be even more dense depending on the camera distance. So let's go out of local view and I'm gonna throw a texture on there. Hang on, I gotta UV unwrap this quickly. AU unwrap, go over to the UV editor. Yeah, I figured that's the wrong way around. R90 minus. And I'm probably gonna have to scale it up, but I'll see with the texture on there. I'm gonna switch over to my asset browser, and I've already downloaded one from Megascans back when they were still all free. Stacked stone, there we go. That's the one I want to have there. Let's go over to the shader editor. So I'm pretty sure the displacement is at 1, which is always super crazy. If we go over to rendered view, first and foremost, it's way too big. So I'm going to, where am I? There we are. So let's S to scale and scale this up. So cultured stone like this isn't that big. Those tiles are usually fairly manageable in size. I think something like that looks pretty good. Let's go over to the render view. And yeah, let's go to 0.1. And that looks a lot better. Yeah, that looks pretty nice. I like that. And now when I bring in windows, I can fit them to the displaced texture. So doors and windows. For this project, there were no specs in the drawing that we had or the image that came for this project. So we don't have really any information. So we basically have the freedom to put in whatever. Windows and doors can be a pain to model, depending on how detailed you want to have the profiles and all. I want to have them very detailed because I want to have interior shots at some point and do interior archviz here too and close-up shots, and also I want to have them very detailed. So I'm going to rely on assets. Now there's plenty of options out there available. Built into Blender, for example, would be Archimesh. Not the biggest fan, they're not very detailed. Sometimes there's a lot of issues with extra faces that shouldn't be there, or the normals are flipped and all. So if you only look at it from afar, it's perfectly fine. If you want to do close-up shots, I'm not the biggest fan of Archimesh. You can get fairly decent windows on BlenderKit and all kinds of other places. I'm going to use iMesh. So I'm going to load up my assets. By the way, I'm using Clean Panels Pro, which has that awesome feature of delayed add-on loading, which is just great. It speeds up the Blender loading time so much, and I can only load up the add-ons that I really need when I need them. So I highly recommend that one. So iMesh just released their brand new asset browser, so you can browse and download right within Blender, which is really awesome. And I just like their assets. The quality is always great. So that's what I'm going to go with for this project. I'm going to go back into solid view for the time being though. And I'm also going to go into solid view instead of texture view. So I'm going to start with the main entrance door. So I'm going to switch over to doors. And I'm going to bring my 3D cursor to this edge here, just so I'm dead center in the opening here. And I want to use that one, industrial front door. That's a really nice one. So first I'm going to bring it to where I need it. So I'm going to snap it to this corner here. G snap. Make sure I'm in the right position. Right on the ground. So now I just got to bring this one over here. I'm also going to close the door. I'm going to zero out the rotation. Shift select the frame again, and I think I'm going to make the whole door a little bigger. It's an industrial door. Can be a big heavy door for this house. I'm okay with that. I'm going to go into edit mode and select everything over up to the middle of the glass. Have a bit more glass in the door, why not? GX, snap it over to the other side of the opening. And I want to have just the frame selected. And I'm going to select everything on the front. And this is why I put the texture in there first. I'm going to go into render view again. Because I got to bring this out a bit. GY, bring this out a bit so it lines up with that texture. Or if we think of it as a window flange or a framing or a flashing around the door, it would cover the cultured stone that we have here. I think also we're going to make this a little bigger, just so it covers everything a little more. So GX, bring this over. I'm okay with it overlapping here. So if we deactivate the edit mode, so I'm okay with that. The cultured stone would, when you apply it to the wall, it would butt into the window or door frame anyway. So I'm okay with that. Let's do the same thing on the other side. I'm just gonna grab this whole side here and GX, bring this over just a hair, so just so it overlaps a little. Front view, make sure I got the door selected too. And I gotta bring this up a bit. Now with all the edges that we added and all that topology, it's kind of hard to see where we are. But I think that looks good. Now, this is pretty nice. The only problem that I have with all the doors that iMesh has to offer is they don't have a threshold. So you have to be either very careful with your material transition between exterior and interior, or what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add a threshold. And it can be really simple because there is not much to it, but it's nicer to have one. So I'm gonna select this face here, Shift D to duplicate it. I'm gonna extrude it down. I'm just gonna eyeball this. Take this face over here, and I'm gonna bring it all the way to somewhere over here, GX, there. And I'm gonna Control L to select the whole island and give this a bit of a bevel. And now back in solid view, just gonna make sure I got the door and the frame selected, and I'm just gonna bring this up a little more. Roughly about there. Now we're gonna have a displacement texture on the porches later on too, so I can bring it up a little higher. I might even have to bring it up even more. Actually, I should have brought this all the way. Control plus to select everything. And I'm just gonna bring this GX all the way over here. And that way, wherever the material transition between exterior and interior will be here, it'll be covered. So we have our door, and I'm also going to reuse materials from that door. That's why I brought this one in first, because the windows usually come with a white PVC material or something like that. And I'm going to reuse the materials from that door because I want to have them in black. And one thing I want to do here though is I'm going to create a new collection and call this doors. And I'm going to move that door collection into my doors. Makes sense. And I'm going to make another one for the windows. And I'm going to start adding windows. So I'm going to bring my cursor to this edge here. And these windows here and in the peak, they're going to be a little different than all the other ones, because you won't be able to open these. So I'm going to use a little different windows for there. Let's switch over to windows. I'm going to use this one here because it has a nice, thin, contemporary looking frame. So I'm going to paint this one here, and first I got to position it and resize it. So I'm going to GZB, grab this bottom corner here and snap it to my wall opening. Actually, I'm going to bring it down a little more because I don't want to see the bevel here. Whether I would have the drywall butt into the window frame or something like that, you wouldn't see that bevel. So I'm going to select everything on the top and bring it up here. GZ. Adjust this a little more just so the bevel sticks into the wall. GX. Same thing with the sides. I want to make sure that I don't see the bevel. In wireframe, select everything. Oops. GXB. Grab that vertex. Snap it to there. Now I'm gonna go into top view. So this window has a flange, and I want to bring the inside of the flange all the way to the wall, and then if I have to, I can always readjust it a little for the displaced texture. So I'm going to do this in object mode, GY. I'm going to grab one of these vertices here and snap it to my wall. Now if I go into rendered view, this actually looks pretty good. Now the displacement still looks a little janky, but when we render an image, the adaptive subdivision will be a lot more detailed, and that will make our displacement look a lot better too. So in the viewport, it doesn't really make that much of a difference. So let's switch over to materials, because like I said, I don't want to have the PVC here. I'm gonna switch over to the metal steel universal black, which is the same one I have on the doors, and that makes those windows an aluminum framed window, and it has the same color here. Also the advanced glass, I'm just gonna switch over to the same one as I have in the door. Now back in solid view, I'm going to Alt-D-X and bring this all the way over here. GXB, grab one on the inside, one of these inside vertices that I don't see the bevel on the inside anymore. And make sure we're good here. Went a little far. Okay, that's already pretty good. Now, peak windows. Unfortunately, at this point, iMesh doesn't have any peak windows, so I'm just gonna make them. So I'm going to go Shift-D-Z, bring this up. And first I'm gonna align it here, GZ. And just like I did before, I'm just gonna make sure that I don't see the bevel anymore. And in edit mode, I'm gonna bring it down to this corner here first. Same thing, just so I just don't see that one vertex there anymore. I'm gonna select everything in this corner here and GZ and bring this up. And it's gonna look janky. Like as janky as you can imagine it. But we can fix this. I'm gonna go into front view. I'm gonna switch over to the shear tool. And I'm just gonna eyeball this. It's gonna be a little thicker than the rest of the frame, but I'm okay with that. It's gonna make sure that it looks somewhat parallel here. And I might have to bring this down a bit. That looks actually pretty good. All right, that's one peak window done. I'm gonna Alt-D, bring this over, Control-M-X to mirror it on the X-axis, and then I just have to position it here. It actually looks pretty good. Yep, approved. So now I just have to make one for the middle. So I'm gonna take one of these here. First, I'm gonna bring my cursor up here to this edge, Shift-S cursor to edge. And I'm gonna duplicate one of these windows here, Shift-D, and then bring it to the cursor. I'm gonna align it with the front first, GY, align it with the other windows. And then I'm also gonna bring the sides all the way to where I need them. I gotta bring it over to this edge. I'm gonna GXB, grab one of these vertices and snap it to there. Same on the other side, I gotta bring it to this edge. GXB, bring it over to there. Now these have a couple different mesh islands within the same object. So what I gotta do here is make one loop cut somewhere in the middle. So this one's right dead center. So I'm going to activate my knife tool, A to constrain the angle, and C to cut all the way through. And then I'm just gonna cut all the way through the whole model. And then with everything selected, I'm going to GZB, snap one of these vertices up on the top here to my peak. And then in wireframe, shift select the two corners and bring them down. Now all I gotta do is select everything on the peak here and SZ to scale on the Z axis a little. Do that in front view and then make sure it looks somewhat parallel. That looks pretty good, I think. What was maybe a little too much. SZ, bring this in a little. Something like that. Most of it will be hidden by the timber framing and the roof anyway, so I'm okay with the way this looks right now. So I'm going to select these three here. I'm going to Shift D, Y, bring them over RZ 180 to rotate them. And now I can try to adjust. What happened there? It appears I missed a couple of faces here. So let's fix this quickly. EY, bring them there. Why do I have a gap there? X. Yeah, there was something really weird going on. Let's go into top view. Things happen sometimes. EY, bring it to there. And now we're good. So let's adjust these windows to our openings in the back here. Go to top view, GY. So again, I want to have the inside of the flange on the outside of the wall. GYB, grab a vertex here and snap it to the outside. Same on these ones, GYB, vertex, vertex, and on this one. So at this point, the process of adjusting the peak windows on the other side is exactly the same as it was on the front. So we're going to use the scale tool and the shear tool to adjust the corner and the peaks. So I'm just going to speed right through it quickly. So those are our peak windows. That's the hard part. And now we just have to add a whole bunch of other windows around here. So I'm going to start over here. Bring my cursor to this edge here and go back to the iMesh browser, and I'm gonna just look for a generic window here, which they aptly named generic window. I'm gonna append this one here. Go into local view quickly because it comes with a windowsill, which I don't want. I'm gonna select all kinds of vertices here, Control L to select all those islands and X to delete all the vertices. And now I'm left with the window. Okay, I'm going to rotate it 180 degrees and move it in place roughly here. And the same thing here, that I don't want to see any bevel on the inside. So if it penetrates the wall a little, I'm perfectly fine with that. Now these windows don't have a flange. So I'm going to align them with the outside of the wall here. Bring them down just a hair, so they penetrate a little there. Looks good. And then I'm gonna go into front view, select everything on the top here, and I gotta go to this edge. Okay, so later on when I put my siding on there and my window trim, they'll be all in the right place. So before I start copying that one around, I'm going to switch the materials over just like I did with the other ones. So the plastic white I do not want. I want the universal black steel and the advanced clear 01. And same on the frame. I want to get rid of the plastic. And that way we have nice aluminum windows. I'm going to select the hierarchy here in the outliner, or the objects, all of those. I'm going to Shift, I can actually Alt D, X, bring this over, and Control M to mirror it on the X-axis, just like that we did with other windows. Align it, make sure I'm covering everything. Beautiful. And then I can select all the objects in that collection again, Alt-D-X, and bring those over here. And just bring over a hair so we cover everything as per usual. And now all of a sudden the front is already done. Now for the other windows, I'm probably going to have to do regular copies because the openings are all a little different. So I'm going to select the hierarchy here, and all that can be done in top view. Shift D, bring it over, rotate by 90 degrees. Now where am I? GX, I'm gonna bring this out a little. And this one needs to be a little smaller. Open the right way. So next we're in the bathroom here. This one should probably open the other way, I would say, because there's going to be an entrance door here, which apparently I never opened. So we're going to have the door there. Although there's going to be a pocket door here, so maybe we'll just open it this way. Yeah. So from here on out, the process is pretty repetitive, as in just taking the same window over and over again, copying it and spreading it around throughout all the holes that we have in our walls. So I'm just gonna skip ahead and move on to the next part. Okay, now this is supposed to be the kitchen. Now I don't know who designed this, but where are we gonna put cabinetry here? You have a door here and a window that is way too low, so we're gonna change that. So first and foremost, this one here. Let's select both walls. I'm gonna take these two faces, turn on the edge length overlay so I can have a look at this edge. I wanna have this about 1 meter high. So GZ, otherwise you can't get a kitchen counter under there. So there's 1 meter. So there we have a window there. And here, I'm going to select this face and that one and bridge it. And same here, bridge these faces. And I'm just gonna take the 2 interior faces here. I can select them and delete them. These edges here and give them a face. And I have a face there, that's good. All right, so then same thing again. I'm gonna bring these 2 faces to align with that, so we can at least have a kitchen counter going under the window. Which makes so much more sense. It's just, I don't know why you would have a door there. Okay, I'm gonna grab one of these windows here, the last one, select the hierarchy, Shift D. Welcome to Knobs and Bolts, the ever-growing asset pack for high-detail, photorealistic decorative hardware for your next ArcViz project. Compatible with both Cycles and Eevee. Decorative hardware might seem like a small detail, but it has the power to completely transform a scene. From farmhouse chic to modern minimalist, a well-chosen knob or pull can dramatically change the look and feel of a scene. It not only adds functionality, but also enhances the overall aesthetic, tying your design together seamlessly. Without these elements, even the most beautiful render can feel incomplete. With them, your designs gain character, depth, and a polished, professional finish. Transform your renders today with the perfect finishing touch by adding this asset pack to your library. Knobs and Bolts, decorative hardware for ArcViz and Blender, is available now. Download today and elevate your projects to the next level. Links in the description. So now I just gotta bring one window in here. So I'm gonna bring my cursor there again. I'm just gonna use, I think, this one here. We download and in the window collection, append it. Same thing again, I'm gonna get rid of the sills. Control L, X, delete the vertices. And it's already got the right direction, kind of like that. I think that should do it. All right, there are all the windows. Now I just gotta get 2 more doors in here. So let's start over here. Bring the cursor there. And I'm gonna switch over to doors. And I wanna get one with glass. Let's grab this one here. For the slab, I'm gonna 0 out the rotation. That door should be in the doors collection. Just gonna collapse the windows collection. Select the hierarchy, RZ 180. That's the right way around. Bring this roughly in the middle of our wall opening. And get the windows out of the way for a sec so I can see better here. Bring it to roughly there. And then in edit mode, select this half, and I want to make sure that my my door trim here covers everything. So I'm going to go GX I'm gonna grab my vertex here and snap it to the inside of the door opening. Same on the other side, GXB. And then I'm gonna go to just the frame. So I think what I'm just gonna do is select everything on the outside here, except the hinges. I'm just gonna bring it all the way out. It can be thick. Nobody will ever see this. Right, so I'm gonna do the same thing on the inside. There is no hinges there, so GY, bring this to there. And on the inside I can always adjust it later if I need to. Now I just gotta adjust the height. I'm gonna go back into back view, select everything, and where do I need to be? I need to be there with the inside of the frame. Now for the materials, the window frame, I'm gonna switch from the wood to the same metal material that the windows have, which is the metal universal black 01. And then the wood of the door, I'm going to switch over to the same wood we have on the front door, which is the Charleston tobacco. And now that has the same color. That looks good. So one more door, which is here. I'm gonna bring the cursor to this edge, back to iMesh in the door collection. I'm gonna get a similar door, but closed this time. And same thing on the slab. I'm gonna zero out the rotation. So the same thing again, GYB, just so it covers everything. GYB, this one's a little easier. GX, and then just on the frame, just like we did before. Just gonna grab everything on this side. Make sure I don't have anything selected that I don't want. And GX, bring that all the way out here. I'm gonna adjust that, readjust that later once I have the siding on there anyway. Don't want the hinge. GY, oh, GX, somewhere around there. That looks pretty good. And I just gotta bring this up a bit to about there. Now, and these doors have actually the same issue again, that there is no threshold. So I'm gonna create one quickly by selecting, let's just select this face here, duplicate it, E, extrude it down, Control L, scale on the X-axis, go into bottom view, scale along the X-axis like that, G, Y, bring it to the outside, select just this face, GY, bring it all the way over here, select the whole thing and give it a bit of a bevel. And I can just bring this whole thing up a little. And there we go. Should probably do the same thing over here. But first I'm gonna select this one more time and change the materials here too. Where is it? Metal, universal black. And switch that over to the tobacco. Now this one. Now we can bring the windows back. And also the timber framing and the roof. And look at that, we have doors and windows. Now the last thing I want to do is get a footing here for our posts. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go into the post collection and select them all. And because I have machine tools, I can just bring all the object origins to the bottom, which will help me a great deal here. And with this one selected, Shift S cursor to select it. Now within the timber framing collection, I'm going to make a new collection and call this post footings. I'm going to Shift A, add a cube. Now I'm going to scale this down so it's a little thicker than the post. GZ, bring it there, and again bring the origin to the bottom. I'm going to select my top face and bring this up to about there. I'm going to scale this up a little and make it a little thicker. That looks good. Control A to apply the scale. I'm going to call this footing. I'm going to go into edit mode and add a bunch of loop cuts. So let's make this 10, 5 and 5. And I'm going to select my wall on the front entrance here. Control L to link the materials. And I'm going to just do a cube projection here. And that looks already pretty good. I'm going to make the same modifier here. Simple, adaptive, and that way they look really nice. So I want to make another top here though. So I'm going to add another cube. Scale this down so it's a little wider than the footing. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And the top face, I'm going to I to inset. So it lines up roughly with the post. I'm going to bring this up a little so we have a bit of a slope there. Control A to apply the scale, and I'm going to put a bevel modifier on there. My standard 2 and 4 should look pretty good on there. And let's see what kind of concrete texture I have kicking around here. Materials, concrete. Let's just take it 2K. Plenty. Let's check the displacement, 0.1. AU cube projection. Do I even need a displacement on there? If I give that a little bit of a modifier too. I think that looks pretty good. Maybe make this 4 mil, give it a little more. Crush the normals a little. Yeah, that looks pretty good. I like that. Now I want to have this on every post. So I'm going to shift and drag it on there. That way it's parented. And within the post footings, I'm going to make a new collection and call this post footings instances. And these two go right in there. And then under the object properties and collections, I'm going to set the offset from 3D cursor. So now what I can do is bring my cursor to my next post, Shift A, collection instance, and I'm going to look for my post footing instances. And that way, instead of recalculating everything all the time, I'm using an instance which saves on computing power, which is nice because we're using adaptive subdivision. And I just realized that I accidentally re-unwrapped this here. So I'm going to do this one more time. U unwrap, and I got to go back to the UV editor and change that again. Rotate -90 and scale it up. There we go. That fixes that problem. And now I can, whoop, why is that post up there? So now I can go to every post and bring my cursor there, Shift A, collection instance, and bring another instance to every post. Okay, so let's go to the porches in local view. I'm gonna get rid of a bunch of face. Actually, I gotta go into here first and make a couple of loopies. A loop cut there. And on the front, I'm gonna make a loop cut there and there. And then in local view, I can get rid of faces that I will never see. Because why have computing power wasted on the displacement here when I will never see those faces? X faces. So now I'm going to go into top view and make a bunch of loop cuts. Let's just do 10 here, 10 here, and 10 there. And then perpendicular to it, let's do 4 and 4. Same here. 10 loop cuts. 10. Actually, I could have gone with less here. 4 and 4. Now both of them get an adaptive subdivision. Switch to simple, so the corners don't get rounded. And then I'm just gonna throw a gravel embedded concrete. I think I got this from Polyhaven on there. Let's see what that looks like. Gotta UV unwrap those first. Let's do a cube projection. Should do it. This is way too big, but I'm gonna solve that in a minute. Other port, AU cube project. Control L to link the materials. Okay, let's hop on over to the shader editor and set the scale to about 35. That should do it. Yeah, that looks a lot better. Now, with that kind of scale, we're going to see the tiling here. So what we can do is I'm going to bring this over here and Shift A add a mix color node. And I'm going to get a white noise texture. And I'm just going to mix this in here. And the more I mix it in, the more the tiling disappears. I'm just going to decrease the amount of displacement, and that way that looks a lot better. And for the time being, I'm just going to give this wall the same concrete material. Control L, link the materials. AU cube projection. Way too big right now. Just go into the UV editor quickly and scale this up quite a bit. I won't be seeing much of that after the siding is added anyway. It's more for the foundation down here that I want to see this. Let's bring back the ground plane. And one more thing I want to do, which is what I said in the last video, that I do not like this wood texture. But I got one on Blender Kit, which is a lot nicer, which is natural oak. I'm gonna go back to the shader editor. I'm just gonna select all the posts, all the beams, and all the supports. Control L and link the materials. And then I'm gonna bring in a color ramp. And pop this in here. And I'm gonna grab a couple of colors here from the door and adjust from there. So I'm gonna grab the darker one here. And the lighter one there. Now they're not exactly accurate right now. First and foremost, they're a little green. I'm going to bring them back into more reddish. And I'm going to crush those values a little. Bring the dark down a little. Maybe I'll switch the HDRI over to something more neutral. What about this one? Yeah, that looks a little better. So this is still a little greenish. That I kind of like a lot better. But what I'm also going to do is bring in a bump node. Bring this in between here, and I'm going to grab the roughness map here and bring this into the height and bring the strength down to 0.1. And that way there is a little bit of a bump to that whole texture. And that already looks a lot better. So we're almost done with the exterior of our house. What needs to be done now is roof texture and cladding. And for that, I have something special in mind. And we're going to do that next time. So stay tuned for that one. Subscribe to make sure you don't miss it. Make sure you grab your copy of Knobs and Poles. And thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.